And clearly where conflict exists, there may be a great need for aid. There almost certainly is a greater need for aid, but very little prospect of that generating self-sustaining growth while conflict is going on, or even in its immediate aftermath. Where corruption and poor governance exists, and I'll come back to this, that too can both siphon off aid and can undermine the prospects of economic development, because businesses can't easily prosper if they have no certainty of what things are going to cost or how things are going to be done, and can only achieve it through corrupt and illicit methods. There are, finally, perhaps most important, there is what is known as Dutch disease. For those of you who are economists, you'll be familiar with it. It's called Dutch disease because when Holland developed its natural gas fields, it's had a sudden influx of foreign exchange that drove up the real exchange rate of Holland and choked off a lot of its previous exports and contracted its exporting industries. A similar effect can occur with an inflow of foreign aid to a country. Effectively, before the arrival of that foreign aid, the economy would have to export goods in order to import what it required. When suddenly it receives foreign aid, it no longer needs to export so much because it can obtain the imports it wants from the foreign exchange provided by the aid donors. And so its real exchange rate rises, chokes off some of its previous manufacturing, and those resources are no longer used in exporting manufactures or other agricultural produce or whatever. Now, in Holland, the Dutch disease didn't have any long-term negative effect. It was painful for people being thrown out of work in the manufacturing industries, but sooner or later they got jobs in industries supplying domestic needs. In developing countries, the effect of Dutch disease, caused by this inflow of foreign exchange, can be much more negative. There may not be alternative employments for people thrown out of the previous manufacturing jobs. But on top of that, manufacturing is likely to have been, manufacturing for export or agriculture for export, may have been the area which had the greatest prospect of productivity growth. It's certainly been the experience in the Far East. And that can not only show growth in those sectors, but can feed back to growth in other sectors of the economy. The effect of an inflow of foreign exchange Dutch disease is to choke off and contract your export sector. That can have negative effects on countries. So it's very important to recognize the possibility of that effect and to try to ensure that it's kept to a minimum, to the extent that's possible, and that other steps are taken to increase the capacity of the country to absorb aid without ill effect. A lot of people think, well, what's needed as far as developing countries? They need more education. Let's give them the money to double their education budget. They need more health. Let's give them the money to double their health budget. And that's certainly well-intentioned, but what will it achieve? One has to recognize that all foreign donors can give is foreign goods and services, or foreign exchange to purchase foreign goods and services. Foreign aid cannot give countries the domestic resources they already possess. It cannot give them the nurses, doctors and hospitals they already possess. It cannot give them the teachers, schools and textbooks they already possess. It can only add foreign resources. If a donor says, oh, we're going to pay for your education budget, all it's doing is transferring a sum of foreign exchange that is arithmetically equal to that proportion of the education budget which it's agreed to support. But that foreign exchange initially probably will arrive in the hands of the government, will almost certainly not be spent on education. It could be, well, there's no reason why it should be spent on education, it could be spent on anything. So when we think we're helping pay for the budget of education or health or whatever, we're actually providing that country with a sum of foreign exchange on which it can spend on importing foreign goods and services. And that's all it can do with it. And that may be of great value. It can enable countries to do things that they would not otherwise do. But we shouldn't imagine that this suddenly miraculously increasing the size of the education system. The only way the education system will increase in size and capacity is if they train more teachers. And to train more teachers, they'll have to train more teacher trainers, first of all. They'll have, of course, to acquire textbooks and that sort of thing, which may come from abroad, and build schools, which may require resources from abroad. But a lot of it will be domestically using resources to cascade up the capacity domestically. And we do them no service if we pretend that it can be done otherwise. Now, there are some things where that foreign aid is directly helping the expansion. Take my example of education, where we've said to countries as we have in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, we will help meet the cost of providing primary education free. So there, up to now, the government has been charging fees for primary education. Result, a lot of children don't go to school, and a lot of poor people who do send their children to school are actually having to spend the very basic elements of their livelihood on schooling. It's something so important that it's almost the first thing an African or Asian or Latin American family will do will be to spend on the education of their children. Not everybody can. If the British government says, right, that costs you 100 million domestic dollars, or rather you are raising 100 million domestic dollars through fees, and to forego those fees is going to cost you $100 million of your domestic currency, assuming it's sort of one-to-one between this domestic dollar and foreign dollar. We give you $100 million. You can then forego those fees. That will increase the demand in the economy by $100 million. And hopefully that will, well, inevitably, that will spin off into imports. It will draw in imports. Effectively, it will increase the living standards of the country as a whole to the tune of that amount, and enable the parents to send their children to school. More children will then go to school, and you'll have bigger classes until you've increased the number of teachers. You haven't increased the number of teachers. It's only when you train up more teachers that you've actually increased the capacity of the system. All you've done is enable people to go to school without having to sacrifice a portion of their income, which was effectively impoverishing. So, there, on the aid side, we have to recognise that aid, while essential, doesn't always do what we think it does. And unless we're prepared openly to recognise that, we won't get our policies right. We've broken down our researches into 6 areas. We have one looking at aid in the sense of flows of aid funds that are designed primarily to improve the social and health and nutritional well-being of a country. They may have benefits for the growth rate of the country, but you'd want to do it even if it didn't have any positive effects on the growth rate. You want to help wipe out AIDS or malaria or whatever, if in addition that has the effect of cutting down the appalling death rate of people of working age and then boosting the economy, that's splendid. But you want to do it even if it didn't have that effect. Then there's development. That is actually, we've got a second project on development, which is policies and aid flows designed to directly improve the growth and economic growth of the country. Thirdly, we've got a section on trade, how we can help African, Latin American, Asian countries to develop through trade. Then there's corruption in governance, how we can tackle that problem, and conflict prevention and resolution, and the 6th group on DFID itself, how the Department for International Development can be structured to get the most effective bang out of our aid buck.